Scammer. You gotta move your truck.
Myself, my name is Kevin Ransom. I'm with Carrier Commercial Service out of Syracuse. We were responsible for the initial startup of this machine. This machine is manufactured in Morrisville. The compressors are manufactured in Syracuse still. State-of-the-art facility that manufactures these machines, these compressors right from scratch. We're also responsible for first-year warranty on this machine. It doesn't include service, but any warranty issues that come up, we're responsible for administering that warranty portion of the show. So, having said that, again, the initial startup was done about a month ago, or less than that a little bit. Where we came in, we go through the machine, do all the pre-startup checks, do all the initial programming, and then get the machine up and running per design specifications that basically were what this machine was sold for. In your case, it's designed to do 17.5-degree return brine and 15-degree supply brine for the ice cream. Just a little word about the manual that I gave you. You notice up at top that there's a couple of different model numbers this machine, that this manual covers. Your machine is a 30 HXC 171. Alright? HXC means that it's a packaged water-cooled screw machine. Alright? But again, these other machines, HXA, this is a water-cooled. HXA would be air-cooled. Essentially the same machine, only the condensing medium is air instead of brine, or instead of water. And then the 30GX series is basically a packaged outdoor machine, air-cooled. Okay, but there'll be references to all variations of the machine. Just keep in mind that yours is a packaged water-cooled chiller. This manual is quite detailed. Going through it, you'll notice there's a lot of information in there, but it's a good reference. It's nothing you're going to sit down and read cover to cover, I don't think. But it's a good reference for anything that comes up, questions in your mind from the operation of it. Hopefully I'll get you guys familiar with the interface, with the controls at least today, give you a basic understanding of the mechanicals and the refrigeration and oil circuits in the machine. So at least you know what's going on inside the machine when it's running. Just a general overview of what the machine consists of. Like I said, it's a 171 model number. Essentially, it's normally a nominal 140 pounds. Because of the temperatures you're running, it's approximately 90 tons in that range, actual capacity output, the ring. separate refrigeration circuits on this machine. So you could have a problem with one circuit and conceivably still have a healthy circuit operating. It's about a 55-45 capacity split, so one circuit is a little bit larger than the other. Not enough to say so probably in your application, because probably either one, once you're down to temperature, will maintain the ring, I would guess anyway. You will have times when both circuits do operate. This started up when you had about a 20-degree brine, so it's going to try to pull down to 15 degrees. So with a microprocessor control, it's going to look at your varying conditions as far as your entering brine and your leaving brine and determine over a period of time how much capacity is required to pull it down to 15. So when it first starts up, you're going to run on the one compressor. The one compressor will load up fully. Again, if the pull down rate isn't sufficient and the processor doesn't decide that it's a substantial amount of capacity to pull it down to that 15, it will start the second compressor. There's an automatic lead lag, so at any given time, the other circuit may start first versus this circuit. And the way it determines that is it looks at the 1/4 the number of operating hours of that circuit along with the number of starts. And it adds those two together, and the circuit with the least number will be the next circuit to start. Okay, so it tries to balance things out. And again, we look at a start as being roughly 4 hours of operation as far as wear and tear on the motor. Okay, so that's why we use that, the processor uses that little formula to decide which circuit to start. The compressors look identical, physically they look identical, but internally they have a different size motor and they have a different size set of gears. The rotors of the screw are turned with a gear drive. And again, depending on the capacity required from that compressor will determine which motor is put on here and which set of gears. Okay, so the larger compressor obviously is going to have a little larger motor and also turn a little faster to provide the capacity required. We'll walk around, I'll point out some other mechanical parts of the machine. Now your guys' involvement is you essentially just, you operate the machine. So when you come in here, you need to look at it. You typically log readings on a regular basis? Okay, good. So have you had any interface with this panel yet?
Just briefly with that.
Okay.
Show us briefly.
Okay, good. Primarily I want to get a little in-depth into this. I think it's fairly user-friendly. Like anything else, once you get used to it, it becomes more friendly to you. So the more you use this, and the more familiar you are with it, obviously, the easier it's going to be for you. Before I get into this, by the way, this is just the human interface between you and the microprocessor controller. This machine will run, if you unplug this, this machine will continue to run and do everything that it's set up to do. This just provides you a window to look into what's going on with the processor. And it also allows you a window into changing the configurations to get it to do what you want it to do. The initial configurations, like I said, were put in by us at the time of the startup, and typically you won't need to go in and change those for any reason. If a particular reason does arise, I would prefer that you just ran it by us first. It may not be a problem, but again, it may be something that could cause something to be out of whack. So if you do, for some reason, desire to change something, just run it by us. Just a phone call, and we can probably tell you one way or the other. The other things, as far as accessing your parameters, your pressures, your temperatures, again, that's a pretty user-friendly way to get in. There's a user-friendly way to get in there and just go through and read those out. Just onto this electromechanical portion of the panel, you'll see the one rocker switch. It has remote, contact, off, and enable. Essentially, you'll be operating in the remote contact mode, and what that does is it switches control over to the smart drive as far as starting and stopping. The smart drive will say I need cooling, it'll send a signal to the chiller to start, and then the chiller looks at your brine temperature and essentially controls capacity to that set point. Of course, in the off mode, regardless of what the smart drive is telling it to do, it's going to turn it off. So at any time you can turn it off. And then in enable mode, it's going to run regardless of what the smart drive is wanting it to do. So you probably only want to be at any given time in the remote contacts enable mode or the off mode, because the smart drive, I believe, controls the pumps.
Right.
So you don't want to, try running, even though there are safeties that will probably not let it start. It's best not to test the safeties out in that manner. The other switch you'll see here is what we call emergency, and basically that's just on or off. I don't know if you noticed, but when I turned the switch off before, it took 2-3 minutes for the machine to actually shut down. Well, if you ever need it to shut down immediately, you can just hit that to off, and boom, everything will just drop right out, because essentially what that does is it interrupts control power to the processor or the brains portion of the control system. So it'll just drop out immediately. Will it hurt anything? No. It just won't allow it to go through its normal pump down mode, which is part of its normal cycle. So that should always be on, and then this is your operating switch. Again, either remote contact or off mode should be the position of that switch. On to the what we call the navigator. Just a little more about this panel. Internally in here are also the main compressor contactors for the starter portion of it. And those contactors are controlled by the processor, as well as a couple additional boards in there that basically sequence those contactors on when it wants it to start. So there's no separate starter anywhere for each one of these motors. It's all integral to this main panel. And all your boards essentially are under this panel. And like I said, your high voltage portion is separated with a divider and is essentially over on that side. I believe there's a separate control source, if I'm not mistaken. Probably in that panel, one of those panels over there, that provides a 115 volt source to the control side of the machine. And then you have another, I believe this is 460, another 460 source providing the high voltage power to the machine. On the navigator, you'll notice right now, you see a little red light says run status, and you'll see a scrolling or a sequencing display. And what we call that is our default display, which essentially gives you some of the primary information you might want to see or you might be interested in when you first walk up to the machine. So that will always, 100% of the time, be sequencing and scrolling through that information. If you haven't seen it, basically it's time and date and day of the week. You're entering and leaving brine temperatures. I have to wait till it comes up. Entering brine, leaving brine. Your set point. And again, that set point is 15 degrees. You'll also notice a control point. And what a control point is versus set point, if you were doing any reset temperature, I don't think you are in your panel, but you could do a remote reset of the set point, and essentially that would be considered your control point at that point, because it would be different than your set point. So that's why those two numbers will be the same on this display. So don't let that confuse you. Basically your set point is going to be your control point as far as your 15 degrees goes.
When you change the ice temperature, the set point is the one that you change.
Right, right. That's right. Okay, to get out of this scrolling mode, you can hit your escape key, And the next thing you'll see on the display is select a menu item. And by menu item, they mean this list of items below the run status light. Okay, so at that point, you can do one of two things. When you see that on the screen, if you hit the enter and escape key together, it's going to go back to that default scroll. Okay, so we'll hit escape again. So at this point, we can use the up or down arrow to go to the mode, the primary mode that we want to be in. And the modes are service test. Service test is one of the functions we did at initial startup. It allows you to go in and essentially exercise all of the inputs and outputs to the controller to make sure they're functioning properly. Probably not something you'd be getting into every day. It's more of a troubleshooting procedure when you are having a specific problem. Next thing is temperatures. That allows you to access all of the temperatures that the machine monitors. So if you hit that, once you get to the particular mode you want to access, and you hit the enter. There's not a lot of keys here, so it's pretty easy to follow through. Now, if for some reason I said, I didn't want temperatures, I wanted pressures, eventually you hit the escape key, and you go right back to select the menu item. So we'll go back into temperatures. Now you see you got three different sub-menus, sub-modes at that point. You have unit, which are going to be all your unit temperatures, anything common to both A and B circuit. And you have circuit A, so any temperatures that are dedicated only to circuit A will be on that menu. And then circuit B, all circuit B temperatures. So if you wanted to, let's say you wanted to check your discharge temperature on circuit B, you can either scroll up or down. This is a continuous menu, so you can go up or down. In this case, it'd be shorter to go up, so I went up, circuit B. Again, hit enter when you get to an item you want. Now you see a bunch of abbreviations. It says SCT.B, SST.B, SH.B. You can probably guess what some of those mean, but if you were unsure, you don't need to go to your manual, even though it's in there. At this point, if you just hit both keys at once again, it'll go into an expanded mode, and it'll read out in plain English what that temperature is. In this case, SCT.B is saturated condensing temperature. Okay, so again, it allows you to be able to know what you're looking at without a lot of fumbling around in case you forgot what that abbreviation is. And if you want to go back to the abbreviated mode, you just hit escape. And now you got the full list again. And you can scroll down that whole list until you get to where you want. And then you'll see the line separating, a separation line. That's basically telling you you're back at the top of the list again. Okay, so there's about, I don't know, 7 or 8 items on that list. It'll allow you to see only 4 on the screen at a time, so keep in mind there's probably more there if you don't see exactly what you're looking for.
So you're gonna have two different sets of discharge pressure, A and B?
Right,
Okay.
right. There are certain temperatures, again, unique to just the chiller, or to the common chiller. And then there are certain temperatures unique to each individual circuit. So it'll identify that. And again, the menu.
So if we're doing a maintenance log, we should set it up with, should we do something that has both
Yeah.
circuit A?
Yeah, because you won't know ahead of time which one will be running.
Right.
There's no sense taking a set of log readings on circuit A when B is running. So, in fact, I did make up some logs that kind of follow along this menu that might make it easier for you. There's a lot of, I kind of made them up myself because it got a little cumbersome to try to go through all the information in different orders and trying to make up your own log as you went. So this follows along, and again, there's a few pages of it, but that follows along exactly as the menu items show up as you scroll down through. So again, you can use that or modify it as you see fit, but if circuit A is running, again, you just, put a line down circuit B items, you fill in all things common to the machine, and just go to circuit A, or whichever circuit is running, and put that information in there. You may not need to put all the information, but you'll get a feel for what the important information is as you go along. Okay, so if we scroll back up, or if we can scroll down, you'll see unit. And again, remember, we're still in the temperature primary mode, so we're only going to be looking at temperatures. So if you hit enter on unit, you'll see the temperatures related to the whole machine, or both circuits. In this case, all we're looking at is CEWT and CLWT. So how do we expand that? If we wanted to expand that to find out what each one of those temperatures were, how did I say to do that? Press both at once. Okay, so CEWT is cooler entering fluid, and then we hit escape and scroll down. And again, the abbreviations are on that sheet, so you can either refer to that or expand it on here. And these other temperatures that are on this particular screen aren't being used, so you'll see a blinking -40. Essentially that means nothing's plugged into it, so it's not being utilized. So essentially you just have two temperatures on that screen that are going to be of any meaning to you. Okay, and like I said, circuit A and circuit B are just mirror images of one another, just the different circuit temperatures. Okay, so to get back to our select a menu item so that we can scroll down, we hit escape, and then again use your arrow keys. The next mode that we can enter are pressures, and being there are only pressures significant to one or the other circuit, you only have two choices here, pressure A and pressure B. Okay, so you can hit enter on A, and again you'll have your list. And there's probably about, there's quite a few on this one, probably about 10 of them. So if you're looking for a particular one, you scroll through till you find it. Or if you're just taking a set of readings, again, you can just follow through without expanding, or expand and see what the heck it means. Okay, the next menu item is set points. You'll see cool, heat, head, liquid. Probably the only one you really want to enter on that would be cool. So just hit enter. You'll see there's a number of different set points. Because we're only doing one mode, and that's just making ice, we only utilize the first set point. So the other set points are meaningless. They could be anything, because we haven't configured the microprocessor to utilize those in any way. So you're just using the one set point, and that's cooling set point 1, and again that's 15 degrees. If you wanted to change it, on any item you can hit enter. Okay, you'll see that item is blinking now. So at that point, you hit the up or down arrow to make the number change. Once you get it to where you want to change it to, you hit enter again, and it accepts it. So that's pretty easy to do. Heat, again, it's not being used for heat. Head, I think we are using head pressure control here. I believe we're sending a signal to the drive for the tower fan. So that set point is significant in this case. We're controlling head pressure, and again you can have a set point different on one or the other circuit, but both are set for a 90-degree set point at this time. And again, if for whatever reason you wanted to change that, you hit enter. Once that numeric value is blinking, you're in a mode where it's allowed to be changed. And just hit enter, and it accepts the value that's in there that's doing the blinking at that time. Just a little note about head pressure. Head pressure is critical on a screw machine because it uses that head pressure versus suction pressure to drive the oil through the system, as opposed to just running an oil pump all the time. It uses that differential pressure to push the oil into the screws, into the bearings, and provide lubrication. So if for some reason that head pressure got unusually low, it might cause you to go into problems with maintaining oil pressure in the system and essentially cause you to go off on a safety. So it's critical that that head pressure is maintained at a nominal level. Well, again, we're set for 90 degrees. Does it have to be 90 degrees? No, at the time of the startup, we really weren't set up 100%. You may be able to lower that, but that's really not a bad number to run at this point, especially during the winter. Like I said, it's probably going to help prevent some nuisance problems where you'll have that water go extra cold on you and drop that head pressure. You may run into oil pressure nuisance trips. The other set point here, which is really one you really don't want to change, we maintain a refrigerant level in the cooler. We do it by electronically sensing that level, and we essentially control to a specific level referenced by a number. In this case, that number that we want to control to is 1.8. And that's done through a means of controlling or programming where the electronic expansion valve is throttled, opened and closed to maintain that level that's fed back to the processor. If you'll notice, one of your items on the log sheet is that level in the cooler. You may not see that exactly at 1.8 all the time. It's going to fluctuate, and it's also going to be reset based on some other internal parameters that are going on in the machine. So it may be reset up and it may be reset down, again, depending on what's going on. It tries to compensate for varying conditions, within the system. So that number should be, it may be 2.0, 2.1, again, depending on how soon after startup it is, how stable a load is, and things of that nature. And that's it for that menu. The next primary mode is inputs, and that's a listing of all your inputs that are fed back to the processor. Inputs such as the status of your compressor contactor, telling it, yes, the compressor contactor did close and I'm up and running. So things of that nature. You have a general input screen, you have a circuit input screen, and then any 4 to 20 milliamp inputs that may be used for resets or things of that nature. So here we see our start-stop switch. The status of that is stop. Flow switch, it says it's off. Condenser fan, I believe. Or condenser flow switch. Condenser flow switch we're not utilizing. I don't believe there's one installed now. So when we did the initial configuration, we programmed out of there, so it's not even looking for that. Demand limit switches, again, those aren't being utilized. So a lot of these inputs, the general inputs, aren't being utilized. Primarily your flow switch and your start-stop switch. By the way, on this mode readout, it'll say local on and local off. Even though you're in the remote position, it still uses that or senses that as being a local on or off. So don't let the fact that this says remote and the fact that this says local. This status would show the same whether you're down in this position or up in this position with the other panel calling for you to be on, because that switch just parallels this switch electrically as far as telling the machine to stop and start. Okay, the next is outputs. And again, we have general outputs that affect are common to the machine, and then individual circuit outputs. Fans, because this is a generic control for, like I said, an air-cooled package machine, this processor has capabilities of cycling those fans on that air-cooled machine on and off. So you see some items sometimes on the screens that don't pertain to your particular machine. Don't let that confuse you. These just aren't being utilized at all. You have MLV, if you expand on that, minimum load valve, and that's essentially, we call it minimum load control. It's essentially a hot gas bypass that allows you to run in the lower capacity ranges without cycling the machine. Pump outputs, condenser pump, chill water pump, and then there's what we call a Z.CLC. That's what we call a calculated Z factor. It's part of the calculations used to determine how much capacity is needed. That number is going to change depending on how big the load is on the machine. Configurations, there's a list of all the configurations in the manual that I gave you. Again, the chances of you needing to change something in there are slim to none, but just to make you aware, the initial configuration of the machine was done in this menu, in this mode, through the various sub-menus or sub-modes in that screen. And you can look at them in your manual to see the variations of selections that are there. But I don't see any need to go through all of that. Time clock, basically is where you set your time and date, and then there's a schedule there. You're not using any schedule. There's a choice where you can tell the processor to either look at a time schedule that's programmed in this machine, or just ignore it. And we've programmed it to ignore it because we don't want to, conflict with your smart drive. So there's no time schedule. When this switch is on, it's essentially going to run 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, as long as you want it to. Okay. But there is a place for a schedule, and you could even set the schedule. But again, if it's not programmed to look at it, it doesn't matter. Okay. If you were programmed to look at the schedule, that screen will tell you that you're in a time occupied mode or an unoccupied mode, that you are being controlled by that time schedule. Okay, time and date, and again, that's where you set up your month of the year, the day of the month, and or date of the month and day of the month. Okay, so that's all been done. And then schedule. Again, that's where you set your occupied and unoccupied if you're going to operate under a schedule. Operating modes. There are certain modes that the machine can go into under varying conditions, and it may override the actual capacity control functions of the machine. So if you're set for 15, you may not be controlling exactly to 15 because of some override, some abnormal condition within the machine that it's trying to correct for. And again, it may sacrifice some capacity during that period. And it shouldn't stay in that override mode for a long length of time. It's trying to stabilize conditions within the machine to get everything back to normal. One of the lines on the default screen is override mode in effect, yes or no. Okay, and then if you wanted to know what override mode is in effect, you can go to this screen, operating modes, and scroll down, and that particular mode will be on when it tells you an override mode is in effect. So again, they're listed by numbers if you wanted to know what they are. Timed override in effect. You could have you won't see that because we don't have any time clock between stop and start, but we can program like a 15-minute stop to start time clock in there. There's no need to do that here because we don't see any chance of it short cycling. But if that were in there, that's one of the modes you could see. Ramp load limited. We do have ramp loading at initial startup so that it doesn't just quickly load right up, you know, run balls to the wall with 2 compressors up, fully running, pull the load down real quick and then have to shut back down. So we have ramp loading. It's going to pull down so many degrees per minute at that rate until it gets down to temperature. So you may see that at any given time, primarily right after startup. And there's a number of them. And again, these are all listed in your manual. Rather than go all through all of them, just make you aware that they're there. Alarms. This is probably the most common area you might be into. We have, and again, there's a full list of alarms and alerts in the manual that describe what they are, what might have caused them, and how to correct for them. We consider an alarm any fault that shuts the complete machine off. Okay, when that happens, you'll see this light illuminated constantly. It'll say alarm status, and that light will be lit constantly. We also have alerts that are both manually reset and automatically reset. Okay, so you could have an alert condition, and an alert condition only affects one circuit or the other. So you're still going to have part of the machine healthy under an alert condition. The other circuit that's in an alert mode may correct itself and start up automatically, again, depending on what the particular alert is, or it may require a manual reset. In any case, if you do have an alert, it's going to show up on this first line, CRNT, and again, you can expand on that, and it'll say currently active alarms. Those are alarms that are still in that condition, which won't allow that circuit or that machine to run. And we call them alarms here, but again, it could be an alert related to only the one circuit, or the total machine could be down. But if this light is blinking, you'll know it's an alert condition. One of the circuits is not healthy at that point. So you go into this screen, you'll see a particular number there. It'll say T051 or any one of those listed in your manual as far as possible alarms or alerts. And at that point, you hit both keys at the same time, and it'll tell you exactly what it is. At that point, you have to find out what it is, correct the cause of it if you can, or call somebody that can help you correct the cause of it. And then you can clear it. You can clear it by going into this RCRN. And again, if you expand on that, reset all current alarms. So if you hit enter, it's going to ask you for a password, because we don't want anybody just coming by here and resetting alarms. The password is defaulted to 4 ones. And it's going to be displayed here, so when it says 1, you can either change that number or hit enter, and then it'll go on to the next digit. Hit enter again, and enter again. Then it's going to say reset current alarm. Now you'll see the no blinking. You can change that to yes and hit enter, and essentially it's reset. Now it may not happen immediately. This light won't go out immediately. It takes, you know, maybe 15 or 20 seconds for the processor to register it.
So that's all you had to do to reset that?
Yes. There are some alarms, let me pre-qualify that, there are some alarms that are related to the compressor protection module, one of the boards that controls the outputs to the compressors, such as start, stop, or pulling the contactors in. It monitors amperage. It monitors phase imbalance and things of that nature, all the electrical characteristics of an operating compressor. If that particular board senses an alarm, because that information is put directly into that particular board, the brains of that particular board, that board can go into an alarm. Okay, so what you're going to get here is it's going to tell you that you have a compressor protection alarm. It's not going to tell you which one. Then you hit expand, and it'll tell you which one. But the reset of that is on a button on the compressor protection module board. Okay, so it has to be reset on that board independently. And then once that's reset, you can reset it by the usual means here. Okay, so that's a little bit confusing, but because that's kind of its own separate brain, it has to be reset independently. And again, it's going to tell you that in the manual. If you have any questions of a particular alarm, you can refer to it. Now, not every single alarm code is in that manual, unfortunately. There was some software changes after that manual was printed, but the majority of them will be there. And also, if a code isn't there in the manual, you can just hit expand and it'll tell you exactly what it is. Okay. Also on the alarm screen is a history. And that'll record, I believe it's the last, I don't recall exactly the numbers, but it's either 25 or 35 most recent alarms or alerts. Anything that causes the light constantly or blink will be registered as an alarm or alert in the history. So to access that, you hit enter, and there you have a list. It stamps it with a particular code with the time and the date of that particular problem. And then once it gets through the 35, it just overwrites the oldest one in there. Okay, but it'll always have that as long as someone doesn't clear it, because you can clear that and start over. But essentially, there's no reason to clear that. You should never want to clear that because it doesn't hurt to have it there. It never hurts.
It's repeating itself in one of them.
Right.
You know what it is.
Okay, so, and again, you can, on any particular one, you hit both keys, it'll tell you exactly what it is. Loss of communication with compressor protection module. I'm not quite sure what that is, but I don't know if there was power shutdown or something, but in any case, if you had no idea what an A180 is, it may not even be in the manual. That one probably is, but just hit those expand keys and it'll tell you exactly. Okay, hit escape and you back out of it. Okay, so now we're back to the main alarm menu. And like I said, this RHIS is where you reset it. You hit enter, the no will blink, and then you change it to yes. It's going to clear that whole history. But again, you really don't want to do that. Okay, any questions about it? I know I threw a lot at you all at once, but hopefully if you've been fiddling with it, you were able to understand a little better. I think now I'd like each one of you to come up here and just kind of go through a couple things. Make sure you feel comfortable with it. And make sure all my blabbering sunk in. Okay, so whichever one wants to come first. Let's say I wanted to go back to the default screen. How would I get there where it scrolls? Automatically sequence on. Will it bang on all at once? No.
So that's what was that lamping, is that what it is? That 15 degree set point, yes. That's what currently is.
Part of that is
15 degrees.
Yes.
they
And
should
that,
adjust the.
because we don't have complete varying control, it's kind of step control. There is a deadband there. It may drop to 14 or 13 and a half before it ultimately shuts off. But at that point, whatever compressor is running is going to be fully unloaded. Okay, so it'll try to back off and stay running before it shuts you down.
See, what we try to do is, the RO system, what you should do every day is you temper your ice, you should lower, we try to lower our temperature, or raise our temperature during the day when we're here, then like 3:30, I raise it back, or put back down. So you're raising and lowering your temperature, helps on the ice, makes it a little stronger, so I want to be able to control that. I mean, that's something I can control right off the smart track.
I would think so, if you're looking primarily at the ice temperature.
That's what I'm thinking, is to do things like that.
Yeah.
It could be that, or you could
Much to change the temperature.
Well, over there, I've got it like at, set it like 17 or 18, depending on what it is, and then I'll just raise it up to like 24.
Well, you do raise it that much.
Yeah, I'll raise it up to 24, and then those compressors, nothing will be running
Yeah.
all day. We're not using it all day, you know, there's no heat load or anything, the lights aren't on, so I'll want them off. It'll raise the temperature, then before college practice starts at 3:30, usually by 3 o'clock, I'll turn it back down. It's a half an hour to start drawing it back down, and then that helps bond the ice bond, makes it a little harder with this kind of system. That's
Yeah, essentially, it's probably gonna work by just doing that, through that, because at that point, it's gonna shut the machine off. I guess you switch to low speed on your pump.
right. That's what it is, it just winds the pump down to low speed. Instead of it has. Now, over there, all we take is suction, discharge, head pressure, you know, and hours, basically hours of running time. You know, like I said, we've got it probably on compressor 1 is the main compressor now. You know, so that's the only ones that we're gonna run. I mean, what other temperatures should we take on this one? Right? I mean, should we honestly, take a reading, yeah, we take like 5 or 6 readings a day over there, and that's the same, probably here, we can just set it
Yeah,
out. Really, we haven't had anything except patch over and stuff like that. This a little bit, and like I said, we've got to get everybody up to speed on taking
I would recommend, obviously, you're entering and leaving fluids, you're gonna have that.
I mean, is it necessary to do every one of those?
Is it necessary? No. Is it helpful? Should a problem arise? It's helpful.
Okay,
So once a day, if you went through and did all those, and then if you recheck.
And again, I don't think you have to do all of them. I would recommend entering and leaving brine. Maybe this, yeah.
I mean, I don't like that I would do with the other side, like this is different.
It's a fine tune deal here.
And then these, depending on which one is running, obviously if the D isn't running, you don't want to apply the reading because they're meaningless. So those are your temperatures. Those are good reference, and again, there's not that many of those, so it's not going to take you that long.
They said the alarm status holds the last 35, then 25 to 35.
25 or 35, I think.
I'd like to just keep, you know, when it gets up to, will it tell you how many are on there or no?
It'll just fill up and then it'll erase the oldest one. So I would just don't even think about 30.
No, not very. I would want to know maybe it's, you know, when it gets to being like 10 or 15 or something, you know, keep a track of all those, so I mean, you know, the top 25, what's it got, whatever results.
Yeah, right. Your pressures, you know, other than maybe once in a while, I wouldn't take those every time. I don't think it's necessary unless you feel up to it.
Over there, we take, suction discharge and oil pressure all the time.
After a couple months, half my time from the low.
Running hours to try to see how long those are.
I would take, don't worry about that. Calculated oil pressure, that's just a calculation process. Again, on the operating circuit, wouldn't hurt to write those down. As long as you're taking these pressures, you might as well take the other 2 or 3.
You get that right.
And this isn't gonna be there. Anything with A2 isn't gonna be there anyway.
It is
So
right
you
now,
don't
if you
have
wanted
to
to
take
one
that
shot,
number.
it's
The
on.
manual tells us
The hour meter's on.
what's the second.
So that's what you put on your starter,
Yeah,
which actually.
oil pressure is difficult because it's a function of
The other day.
your head pressure versus your suction pressure. So that's going to vary the acceptable limit. Essentially, if you're in a condition that's not normal, the machine will pretty much tell you anyway. If your oil filter differential is starting to get high, it's going to tell you time to change the filter.
Now, what
No,
things did you reset on this, like the other day, we had, on the compressor, we had high,
Deleted it.
high after oil pressure, we set
said, oh no, we ran it out here.
lights up on top.
Somewhere down the road.
It was a problem with,
I
leaving the fan in
Oh,
the
yeah.
cooling tower.
It
Got ice
works
in it,
perfectly fine.
freezing up, breathing too
What we
much.
got right
So I mean,
now
I
is
went inside and I could reset,
Where the
I
controls are
turned
set
both,
for
like I
that.
turned the sump pump in hand and that ran, I could hear that was, you know, the sump pump, but then I turned the condenser fan on in
They're
hand,
nice.
and it would go on and then click off, so I knew there was something wrong with that. So I would go in and reset that, get on a big board in there, and then I tried it again, or I got reset it and it clicked up, so I knew there was something wrong back there in the cooling tower, that I could, you know, that had to. So, I mean, is
Well,
there-
because this is kind of independent from that whole
Right. I mean, I just.
system, you're going to see an alarm, high discharge pressure. Okay, from that, obviously, you're going to think about things that, what would cause that. Will you be able to, manually do anything from the machine to, start and stop like your main panel there? No, because it's not really an electromechanical type of system control. But, being you know that, at least you know what it went off on as far as discharge pressure. And then probably the first thing to do is start feeling your pipe, see you got hot water or something. Either your pump shut down or your tower's a problem. So, again, this is gonna lead you in an area to start looking closer. It's not gonna tell you exactly what the cause is, but it's certainly gonna lead you in the right direction. Okay,
So
so,
this one, the one we're running at 55%, it says, and the other.
yeah, of the total capacity of the machine, one does 55% versus 45% of the other ones, so they're pretty close. At least I believe it's
And
a
it-
small.
And one always runs first, that with the, like, compressor P1 will always start the load.
Right, it is
first.
So the run hours roughly should be 55, 45?
No. It just looks at those numbers as far as hours and starts go. Okay, so when we turn this on again, B should start first because it's got the lowest number of hours and starts.
Oh, okay.
Again, it's the sum of those, yeah. And I'm not sure why. That may have been an alarm condition or something and not reset for a while.
Yeah, that's what I wanted, because I mean, over there, we could start, yeah, we could, over there, we could change our hours. Compressor one is the lead compressor, two is the lead compressor, so this will, whatever, it starts backs up, it'll do it by itself.
Yeah, you can set a particular one to be the lead.
Yeah, well, then if it does it by itself, it's fine.
Yeah, so you want to balance it out if you can. So, and remember, it's going to be
Closer on
1/4
start
the number
than
of
the
hours
actual hours, but
plus the number of starts. Okay, that takes that sum is right.
First thing.
2/3.
Back to your log here.
$800 on one, opposed to 12 again.
Because then I'd rather simplify a sheet and just put down what I have, so it's not when people come, that
Overwhelming.
they're just like, man, I gotta take, 40 different pressures.
Yeah, the reason I set this up like this, because it follows along with the exact menus here. Rather than searching around, at least with this, now maybe you can set it up and just, again, as long as you know what mode and sub-mode you're in, just take the lines that you show here. These aren't that critical to take. You could take compressor A1 running in. Like I say, any place where you see an A2 and a B2, you don't have those anyway. There's not going to be a reading there. Or what you might do is just go through and just put an X on the lines for the ones you don't really want. And still use this, so at least to be able to utilize the functionality of placing it in a certain mode.
Right. I mean, the ones I didn't use, I mean, I can recopy it, and just copy it in that sequence. Just,
Yeah, this wouldn't be bad to take. These two, the A and the B, or not that, but the running current. And this menu.
Sold again. The one we show
suction
Cooler,
discharge up there.
cooler level indicators is important too. Big tab.
Yeah.
Okay, so these three items on this mode.
Compressor A, connected current.
You got cooler level A, compressor running current A, cooler level B, compressor B running current. And again, there may be only one compressor running, so it may not be as bad as it looks. These really, I don't think on a regular basis you need to log these. Like I say,
The daily basis, I want to know what I have on a daily basis, and the other ones, I can do it on a monthly basis.
yeah, do it, every
A couple weeks.
week or so, do it once a week maybe. Like this may not be a bad idea to have the EXP position. And again, it helps from a troubleshooting standpoint, if you're starting to run into a problem, you see something way out of whack here, it helps looking at that history to see, whether it took place gradually or all of a sudden. So those two probably aren't bad. And again, if you don't do it daily, maybe once a week, take those two.
This doesn't keep track of any history on that.
Just the alarm history.
The alarm history.
Yeah, it doesn't log any data, from an
That's
operating
why we
standpoint.
need to do that, so they can go back and look at, I mean, like I said, those kind of things, temperatures and those things really can tell you a lot of what's going on.
I'm sure you're the first to hear about it.
I don't know if you guys are gonna connect into the main campus system, but
That was the intention, I don't know, wonder if that's gonna happen or not, I don't know.
that system has a direct tying capability to every point within this machine, so you can sit at a PC and you can read it in a lot more convenient form.
Right.
From a log taking standpoint, you can just print it out. Save you from, manually scrolling through everything. So if you get to that point, it's just something you might. And then here you might want to record your hours and starts. This is just duplication. We already got that, so.
Stan could sit in his office and do all that. Another job for Stan.
I like that, Ron's thinking.
Well, that looks overwhelming to me, so I'm trying to delegate.
There you go. Yeah.
Don't work. Okay.
Your delegation doesn't go.
When the motor gets up to 160 degrees and above, this cycles and injects a shot of liquid. We're constantly pulling gas through there, but it essentially needs a little additional liquid to keep the motor running at the temperatures we want it to. And that temperature, you can read it out in your logs, so that was one of the temperatures I recommended you take. I say the EXV is the electronic feed to the cooler is right here in each circuit.
It's a motorized valve, basically. It's like a stepper motor type valve. So the control looks at how much refrigerant it needs and actually opens that valve in percentage each time. I don't know, so 200 something steps is
Yeah,
255 or something.
200 something steps. Just get pulses from the processor.
So it fine tunes the feed rate pretty good there.
The other thing you might want to log is your, well, probably your condenser water temperature would be a bad idea to log, as well as your pressures and your gauges, because that's an indication of whether your flow is going up or down. It'll be a good reference to refer back to the normal pressure differential. As this pressure differential goes up, essentially barring a plug condenser tube section, as it goes up, your flow is going up. As it goes down, your flow is going down. The difference between these two. Okay. Yeah, the plug condenser, that difference is going to be higher, but also the inlet's probably going to be higher as well. Same thing on your cooler. It wouldn't be a bad idea to log those pressure readings as well. Just put inlet and outlet pressure, just, as a matter of routine. I don't know if there's anything else of interest on this side. I have an oil pump. This oil pump does start prior to the compressor starting, so you may hear it just before the compressor starts. That'll come on. If for some reason you were running exceptionally cold water, this may cycle on to try to maintain that oil pressure. But for the most part, with your control, you shouldn't see that happening. There is an oil level indicator down here. You should see the oil level in one of these two sight glasses, and it's going to fluctuate. Sometimes you can see it at natural level, sometimes you can't. Probably. And this switch monitors that oil level. If the oil level is low, it'll shut it down. Say duplication, one circuit is exactly the same as the other. These solenoid valves, you'll hear these clicking and unclicking and energizing. This will always be energized. That feeds oil into the compressor sector. When the compressor shuts off, that de-energizes them and stops the oil flow. These are your loading solenoids. They actually cover more or less of this. They pull a piston that covers more or less of the screw and gives you more capacity and less space. So you'll hear those clicking on and off, and you'll hear the noise fluctuation as it goes and unloads. Other than that, that's pretty much it.
Sure, we're looking through this today, and I have a lot of questions for,
Not a problem.
questions for you today too.
You should go through things, break them down, anything that you don't do today. Say, just keep a list here, and when the guys show up, or you can call, fax them to us.
Right.
Yeah, we can go through, at the end, pretty much the ones that are going to be more important. Yeah, and there's a couple that are going to vary, even with the brine here, between low and high speed too. So, a couple little quirks that you get excited about, like expansion tank levels and that. It's going to vary when you're at high and low speed. I forget to tell people, and then the thing switches to low speed, and all of a sudden the tanks with full, water, sight glasses way up the top, and they're like, oh my God, what happened? We're about to explode. So we'll go through all that.
All right.
We can grab his sheet there and highlight the ones that are more important.
Yeah, that's what I'd like to do, is just really simplify this as
Yeah.
much as possible. And go through this one.
Let's play out exactly what everything's talking about here, taking, laying out blood pressure.
First, not a problem.
Stuff like that, so I can get things in place, and we can get everything back here on the same page.
Yeah. Now, you could actually, in the end, if it makes it easy for you, whatever you end up with for a list, actually mark the gauges with a number.
What's this one? A1,
1, 2, 3, 4, whatever,
This one
or
on,
letter.
right after.
And you can just go
Right, the ones.
gauge A is this, yeah, so they don't have to know.
That's a good idea.
And that's, right, and then, the one person that's more knowledgeable or whatever can see the trends or whatever.
Right.
How come this one used to be 10 pounds now, 2 pounds?
Should we take care of these temperatures, I forgot, the other day,
Oh, well, yeah, this is for the, for your condenser. It's critical that it doesn't get too low. Or it'll trip out, and that's where we accidentally turned the valve there and tripped it out.
Get you guys back, let's get
Some of these you'll have the tolerances that we should be looking for on, or?
So, yeah, we can give you plus or minuses on, some of the stuff. Things are gonna vary a little bit. So.
Yeah.
Well, if you want, we can, start on the next thing here.
Okay.
Kinda, there's not an awful lot to it, it's more,
Wait till Stan gets back here on that, or don't you think he'll show, or what?
probably ought to get it back here. Why don't you, can you, just go over and, pump and that example here, I'm just got 664. I got where it is. Is it, you get up there?
yeah, because it's not a long spiel or nothing here, it's more a little bit of theory and
Sure you got that way to spend
So
your.
is the smart track engine running then?
that's all functional. It's been running for a week
So
now.
you're saying to display?
Just the display, which is what you see right here. So that's why I thought I'd set this up.
I'll talk to people out there.
And what you should be seeing on there pretty much is from here down, where you're gonna get the descriptions plus whatever the function is doing here. And I'll give you a sheet that tells you really what's happening, you know. Like right now, ice, it's giving you what your actual surface ice temperature would be. Chilled water pump status is your, chilled water pump 1 is your high-low speed pump, or your smart drive pump. And so this is actually going to tell you what it should be. Right now I've got the temperature set for 25, so we're not calling for cooling.
If not, you ought to, gonna go look for him, or?
Yeah, you probably ought to have him come back and just take a look at it.
Yeah.
Just so he's familiar with it a little more. 'Cause
We'll see you guys later.
Thank you very much.
Okay, you're welcome.
So this is like I say, as you call for cooling, you're going to see that whatever your ice temperature set point is, let's say it was 21, as I climb above that with this actual ice temperature here, you're going to see this thing kick to high speed. You're going to see down here that this should kick to high speed. Right now, I think, I don't know why it's reading high speed over there right now. The starter isn't pulled in, so I have to double check that. But what this is, well, actually, it's calling for high speed. And this is a confirm.
That's what it's on. It's
Yeah,
on low speed.
right.
It's calling for high
Right,
speed.
this is the status. So this tells me that I wanted high speed here, did I get it or not? All right, so if this goes to high, then the chiller is enabled. So then the chiller can go through its startup sequence and all that. So you're gonna see things in here. And if you see like things where this one says control on it, what's happened is this underfloor heat pump has an inhibit on it. Because this condenser water temperature is so critical that we're talking about, we don't want it to get below, let's say, 70 degrees. He had the control point for it for, was it 90?
Yeah.
I think, yeah, wherever I wrote it down, it was 90, I believe.
Yeah.
Well, anyhow, we don't want that to stay down below 70 anyhow for any prolonged period, or it causes problems with the thing running, it'll trip. So what we do is if this sees that sump temperature dropping down below 70, it's going to lock out the underfloor heat, because we're sucking heat out of that sump for our underfloor. So it says, I got to keep the heat in there, shut the underfloor heat off. So it'll do that until you reestablish the temperature in your sump again. So it's, we're all looking at protecting, keep this machine running. Who cares about
the
that?
underfloor heat,
Right.
right, okay.
There's other things that are not
More important, right?
important.
We're gonna move on to the office for safekeeping. Yeah.
So half that.
All right. We don't split on, we don't need to split on camera.
I don't know if it's on.
All right, we can log and find out where you are.
I'll only get the pager in there one time.
Oh, yeah, it's 10 o'clock and they're leaving.
Alright. So yeah, what we normally do is, yeah, you'd want one book.
One back here.
Maybe back here, so we can reference it as we're doing service, you know, you can hide it behind some or whatever. Someplace where it's not gonna get
Wet.
water on it and all that, but, actually, maybe even over right
On top of the smart
the
drive?
smart.
Yeah, that's what we'll do.
We can maybe put a bungee strap across the conduit there, hold it right up.
Hold it
there,
right
you
up,
know.
yep, we'll do
So,
that.
that'd be nice, then everybody knows where it is.
Yeah.
And then, like, say, keep one, maybe up in the office for your quick references,
Right.
you know, if you have questions.
If we have, if there's an alarm or something, we gotta call and we can,
Yep.
okay.
And the other one, I just, you know, hide it in the corner, if you got a safe, put it in it, so,
Yeah.
because one of them will disappear, I'll guarantee you.
Right.
You know, and, we've got a copy ourselves, you know, so we can always make more copies, but it's a pain in the butt.
Right.
So, well, like I say, we'll have to have you guys sign off on that stuff that you did receive it,
Yep.
and we're done here, so.
Okay.
Well, we'll
Back over to
start over here, and first I'll, I just wanna make you a little familiar with the panel anyhow. Right now, the display here, is still to be, I got a little problem with the communication on it. This is gonna be your main access though, to the smart drive, and the temperature settings, is basically all you need to access in it, raise your temperature up and down. It's gonna be fairly easy, you're gonna see a set point here on the display, and you just hit the button for that, and it's gonna get you into the set point screen. I'll give you a whole menu on how to do this, when we're done, as soon as I get it functional, so that it's as is, not something, you know, all right, that I believe it's gonna be. This is gonna be very straightforward, what you'll have on here, there's enough lines of display on here, I believe all the items that we have as inputs for temperatures, and read back functions, plus all our outputs, which would be to the valve, to the chiller, turn the chiller on, turn the underfloor heat pump on, all that stuff should show up on one screen. And that screen I have over here on my laptop, we'll go over there. It's the exact same screen basically. So at least you'll be familiar with the screen that we're looking at. That you'll leave up there for the most part for your monitoring purposes. You can get a lot of information for your logging right off there. Your ice temperature and set points are real easily accessible. So we'll always leave the ice temperature as your top one. So, that's pretty much really all we have here. Then just so you know what we got inside, this is basically, this display is your, as he had with the navigator there, is your human interface. It's how you talk to the rest of the system. And basically that's just this one controller. It has pretty sophisticated brain in it. And we've custom programmed this to do the function we want for the ice rink. And anything that's an output, for the most part, we ended up putting a relay in to do that function. So we pulled wires from like the underfloor heat pump, the chiller, or whatever. So you're gonna see, again with the paperwork, that each of these relays is a device. I know for one, the relay one is our pump, our chilled water pump. And then when this is lit, that it should be at high speed. Once that's proven, there's a readback from that on the contactors. That will allow the chiller to come on. I have to know that's number 3. So you'll see anything that should be on. If the light's on, you know something's supposed to be functioning. And if you cross-reference it to, I have a points list that tells all these things. If you cross-reference it, you say, geez, this light's on, but this thing isn't. Maybe my starter trip or something. So it's gonna help you talk with us over the phone about, you know, some of the stuff. It'd be rare, occasion where you'd have to open the panel up to see anything like that. But if you did have a failure, you know, some things just weren't running, you could pop this real quick and look at it and give me a heads up. Eventually, if they tie this into phone line or to the front end package they have, they'll be able to read all this stuff. They can run their bus communication while you're in here. They can run it to this machine, monitor everything. All right. So in that case, the local operators could probably do troubleshooting for you.
Right.
If not, we could probably gain phone access ourselves to call in through them and look at this. Right. Other than getting a dedicated gateway to this, you have to get a phone line right through here, and then you got to buy a phone gateway for them. It's not real expensive, but I'm sure they probably wouldn't do that. No, most of the colleges, they don't. They just tap this onto their existing system. That's it. So. Not much to this thing. It's fairly simple. We got an infrared sensing board here for your camera, and then just a couple power supplies. The controller is really good. Does the whole works. It does thermostatic functions. I can do pressure control, all kinds of stuff. That's actually what's in this one. To do the pressure control is taking the temperatures in that and ramping this fan drive up. So this thing can do tons of stuff. We're using it for a small portion. As things, maybe the facility grows in this can also be hooked into expansion modules. And this one brain can run more devices. I think it's up to 7 more expansion modules. So if you want to do other types, if you want to do alarming, all kinds of good stuff. Right now we've got software alarms in this for high ice temperature at 28 degrees, and we got one other, I can't remember what it is here. I believe it's the low discharge, or low and high condenser water temperature. They say they're software only, so they're only going to read out here. They're not being physically sent through a contact out. We put that in there so that they can, if they put the bus in here, this will show up as an alarm on their front end package. Right? So, and down the line, if there's things we want to custom tailor into it, always come back and discuss what you want. It's not an awful lot to modify the program on it. So that's pretty much the panel. And if we go over this way so you can see the laptop, will kind of describe what we're trying to do here. The smart drive basically is, what we're trying to do with it is get the ice down to temperature as quick as we can and get the temperature satisfied so that we can get this thing to switch down to low speed pump function. When you're when you're in high speed pump, which is predominantly what most ice rinks run, you're using, for an example, let's say $2.50 an hour worth of electricity to run the pump for like a 30 horsepower pump. By getting this to switch down to its low speed, we can get that down to about $1 an hour. And so over the course of the day, if we can keep this thing in low speed for a third of the day, we can save about $12 a day. So it adds up pretty quickly here. The decreased speed of the pump also decreases the heat injected back into the system due to friction in the brine in that with the pump running at high speed. So that means the compressors have to run less often. All right. So that, so that's, we're basically saving all the way around there. So all we're doing then with that theory is right now we're looking at the ice temperature, surface temperature, and we're going to control, right now we're set up for 21 degrees. I've got a 2 degree dead band on it. so you basically pull down to be 19 before it shuts off, and 21 is back on again. When you go, if the ice temperature gets above 21, what you're going to do first is this thing's going to turn on the high-speed pump. Pump normally sits in low-speed dormant until you really need a call for cooling. Switches to high speed then, and on this thing we have a readback from the starter that proves that electrically we have gone to high speed. That's for protection of the compressors and that. We want to prove flow through the chiller other than the carrier unit's flow switches. Those are independent of what we're doing. So we have double protection here as far as freeze protection. Once you prove the status as being high speed, through our program, we allow the chiller to be enabled. And that's through this remote control over here, the switch he was talking about. That'll let the chiller come up and run on its own controls. So whatever we set it for, normally we set them down to the 15 degrees and let the chiller sequence up and do its own thing until we're satisfied with the ice temperature. Part of that running is that we're going to be monitoring also while the chiller's on the sump water temperature, which is our condenser water temperature. It's pretty critical. Like I say, we discussed before, we like to see it 70 degrees or above in order for the chiller to run reliable as far as the lubrication and that. So in here, number one, you've got the variable speed drive on the fan. The chiller's going to sequence up and try to maintain that water temperature. And we also have a bypass valve on the sump. So if we see that it's still extremely cold water, we bypass the water from the condenser and back right into the sump instead of letting it go to the tower. Right? The warmer the water gets, the valve will start opening slowly and finally eventually put all the water outside.
Is that the cooling tower sump temperature? That's the one that should be at about 70?
Right.
Okay.
And then the other you're going to see is this tower bypass valve.
Right.
Is the actual one that will help govern that temperature.
Okay.
Along with that, your sump also is the place where we get the underfloor heat. In lieu of using some other a refrigerant to water heat exchanger,
right.
We're trying to do it a much safer way as far as not having leaks and stuff like that,
right.
And breaking into the system that's a package already. So all we've done is used a heat exchanger to take the sump water through that, and then on the other side of the heat exchanger is your underfloor loop system. As long as your sump temperature is above 70 degrees, your underfloor heat is enabled, and it will try to control at 55 degrees. You're going to find that it doesn't run an awful lot because you get excellent heat transfer here, and it warms it up pretty quick, and then it holds. So,
okay.
If for chance the sump water temperature dropped down below, you're going to see what you're seeing right now is on this underfloor heat pump start function,
right.
That it is stopped and that I've got a control on there. That means that there's an inhibit on it and it's not going to be allowed to start, even though, let's say, it's still looking for the 55 degrees.
Right.
Right here, it's still below it.
Right.
All right. It's looking for heat, but I'm not going to allow that to happen until my primary thing that I want is my sump water temperature coming up above 70. Right. So there's a little differential in there, so it's actually about 75 degrees before that control will come off it and let it function properly. Let's see.
How's it taking the ice temperature? Is it shooting ice out there?
Yeah, you've got the camera, infrared camera out over the ice.
Okay.
And that's going to be taking your temperature through our electronics here. and sending the signal back into
How
this.
often does it shoot the ice?
It's a continuous signal, yeah, yeah. What you've got out
Is the
there,
other one on the other side different? Does it shoot continuous, or does it shoot every so many seconds down on the ice?
well, it's, for our purposes, it's a continuous signal because it's so fast.
Right.
It's, it's like milliseconds, What we do is we use a wide field of view on it so that we don't pick up like nuisance things underneath it. It's actually, let's say the thing's 21 foot in the air is an easy number. We use a field of view of 3 to 1. So for the 21 foot up, divide that by 3, it tells me I got a 7 foot circle on the ice that I'm looking at. So not just one person standing underneath that's going to send the temperature up. The only thing you can put underneath it that's going to screw it up is the Zamboni if you park it underneath it.
Right.
If you drive underneath it, it's not going to notice it. It has basically like an averaging circuit in there, so it's going to read multiple scans that it's taken, and before, right. It's kind of like a CD player, a carry-around CD player with the skip option on it. If you jar it, it's reading way ahead. So hopefully you don't get that skip in it. So like I say, the only thing you can do is if you park the Zamboni, or if you went out and pour hot water. The way we test them is we take a bucket of hot water, we go out and throw it on the floor to make sure that the thing does go up and pulls back down, and you'll see that right away. And within a minute, you'll notice the temperature rise.
Okay, somewhere near the center, is it, where this beam is?
Yeah, this is actually, should be out near the blue line on this end.
Okay.
About a one,
This one is on this end, it's on far blue line.
yeah, yep, about a third of the way out from the board, you'll see it. So, let's see. So that's pretty much the pump on, pump off. When it satisfies, the pump will shut off all the way, and after a time delay, it'll go back to the low speed because you can't just transition right off like that. When that happens, you're going to see that the chiller start here will go to stop. Your pump speed will be low, and your readback will be low.
This is basically what will be on that
Yep.
readout right there.
Yep.
Okay.
And so this thing's, like I say, I'll give you a sequence of operation, and you should be able to go down through this, and I wrote it in the format that you're going to see here.
Okay.
And it should make sense to you that, what should have happened next. Once this thing does its little time delay, it'll go to low speed, and then the chiller will probably still be on. But within a matter of a minute, it'll cycle down. Shut right off, and then the only thing that'll really stay online will be your condenser fan as the condenser water temperature ramps down, the bypass valve as it starts closing down, and then your condenser water pump stays on for 10 minutes past whatever the chiller does, so that we make sure we don't have any freezing problems in the barrel. That's the reason for that, because you've still got high discharge pressure and a low suction there, and because of that pressure difference, you're still moving refrigerant through a metering device, and you could freeze something up. So, let's see. The only other thing really is at any given time, if you have a refrigerant leak in here, we have the Sherlock monitor over here. That's sending a signal to our panel also, and it's interlocked with the chiller start logic. If the chiller's running and we get an alarm from the panel, the chiller's going to be cycled off and locked off until the alarm is cleared.
What's that alarm sound like? I mean, will we be able to hear it above everything that's running in here?
Right now, that one I'm not sure,
'Cause
actually.
we just got a memo from the state saying that if that alarm goes
Anything goes
off,
off an alarm,
we're not supposed to come in the room.
Okay.
But there's other alarms in here, so we were wondering if that should be wired to a light on the outside of the door.
Actually, it should have a remote light or a horn. And I'm not really aware if they did that or not. We have to check with the electrician.
Okay.
Okay.
I know that we discussed it, yeah, we discussed that the other day with one of the guys, but didn't really get an answer, so.
Okay.
But,
Have something outside.
yeah, you really should, because you shouldn't open a door
You
that.
open the door, you don't even know if it's an alarm.
Right.
If you can't hear it,
Yep.
or whatever.
And
You open the door and.
Right, and it can be the same thing as what you have for your fire alarms out there, basically a white strobe light. You don't really need a horn, you know.
That would be
No,
better.
we just had a
Silent alarm.
Right.
And I recommend that myself. I don't, it's unobtrusive, you know, you don't scare the, you know,
Right.
people in the building. And
How can we go about getting that?
I'll talk with Chris about it, and I'll check with the electrician and see if it was in the scope of work for them too. I'm not sure.
Probably not in the scope of work, but we need to get it done.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll talk about it at the job meeting if that's the case.
Right. It's not a big deal really, so. I mean, yeah, you just gotta pop through the wall with a piece of conduit and a box. So, not an awful lot of work there,
And
so.
when that goes on, there's some sort of vent in here? Those-
Yes, you've got one of those fans is hooked to the refrigerant alarm.
And that sucks everything out of it.
Right, it's gonna attempt to anyhow, you know. It depends on how large the leak is.
Right.
And so if, let's say we do have a remote alarm outside, I would, you know, not be totally scared, you know, that something real nasty's happening. You can open the door, see what it looks like in here. I would never recommend in an alarm condition that one person enter the room.
Right.
Always work in pairs.
Right.
So get one guy at the door, use the buddy system, and it's the type of room where you can take one breath and get in and get out. So,
Right.
But you're better off in that case, really, you know, call somebody that deals with refrigerant all the time. So,
Right.
just for liability purposes, everybody. You're going to find that pretty much you should be leak-free unless something starts to vibrate here. And that's the whole purpose, really, of doing periodic walkthroughs.
Right.
And really the logging function here of putting things on paper is all part of trying to get operators into the rooms. Typically in New York, we have a problem with that. The guys, they run out and they do the grooming and that, but they don't pop into the mechanical room. And we always suggest, number one, before you run the Zamboni, that you come in and see what the temperature is.
Sure.
Because if you know, for some reason, you know, this thing tripped off 5 hours before and you had a quirk in your change of shift or something,
Sure.
you know, this thing could be sitting at 27 degrees.
Right, throw some hot water.
Right. So we always recommend just pop in the door, give it a quick look, and then go about your business. And by doing that, you're also gonna get used to the natural sounds in the room.
Right.
And 90% of the troubleshooting that you guys are gonna do is gonna be, I hear something funny. You know, it's not so much the eyes. You should be looking at the sump and stuff like that, but it's more, you know, do I hear something clanging or a different pitch from the compressor, something that's not usual in the room. Same as with the other side of the building, you know. The other thing would be something on the floor that shouldn't be there. Water's okay, oil's not, you know. I think that's pretty much, see, we added the refrigerant alarm. If for some chance, the smart drive itself, we felt that it wasn't working, what we can do is we'll actually shut off the pump number 1, and we can turn pump number 2 to the on position. That'll put it to, that one will come right on at full speed, and then we'll switch the chiller over here into the local control.
Okay.
And that way, and we'll also have to set your set point up to a more normal temperature, 20 degrees or something like that, and then you'll be back to a basic system again. So you have a fail-safe no matter what.
Okay.
So you shouldn't, as far as controls are concerned, have a problem keeping your ice. The only thing that the most likely thing to happen, like you say, would be refrigerant leaks or something like that. And if we keep an eye on that, we can minimize it.
Well, if there's a refrigerant leak, would we see like an oily spot first? I mean, on a pipe or something?
Right,
or
typically you're gonna
greasy
see oil,
looking or-
because oil comes out with the refrigerant. So any place on the skid that you see new oil forming, you know, a skid, slick going down the side or something, let us know, and we'll try to tighten it up ahead of time. What we would do is clean up whatever oil's there, and then we start fresh again, so that we always know what's a new leak, you know. That's unlike maybe on the other side, there's times where the oil wasn't cleaned up on the deck. And I always recommend that the deck be cleaned, not only by the service people, but by the management. They should keep it clear, so that you know when something new is happening, that you sprung a glycol leak or a freon leak. So, like I say, a lot of this doesn't take a refrigeration guy to figure out there's stuff going wrong, you know. It's kind of like dealing with your car, so it's most of the same physics, as far as heat transfer and all that.
But any changes are made over here as far as ice temperature or whatever. Right, we're not doing any adjustments there or anything like that, right?
Right. Once this is set, basically, we should be able to just leave this machine alone for forever, really. As far as like we were talking earlier, he was going through with the parameters and stuff. That's all stuff that you guys really don't need to be dealing with. All you need is basically to be able to scan the temperatures and pressures maybe, and if for chance you need to go to the bypass, how to do the set point. Other than that, you really don't need to be actually getting into the machine here. A lot of it's going to be strictly on this screen, and then on some of the gauges. And like I say, we can go through and make up a list of the important gauges.
Setting ice temperature
Right.
will be,
You're going to be doing that on the smart drive, right? Right. Right. That's the primary spot.
once that's
This
all
is-
functional,
Right.
that's when we
Right.
change that.
Well, right now it's totally functional, except for your access to it. Okay. Which is good for. Yeah. Then you'll be able to go up and down.
What I need to do. and-
Right.
those-
Right now, actually, it's better off this way because now the thing's been running for, let's say, almost a week, and I haven't seen any problems with it. So.
Instead of
and-
us screwing around with it. at
Right.
least we know, all right.
Right. So I pretty much know.
And we can get it, whatever it takes, before we.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to get that ironed out as quick as possible, So.
Are you gonna be here all day today, or? No.
I'll be here for a while. Yeah.
Okay.
If
Because I'd
we.
really like to just, he wasn't too easily, well, I think you should take this temperature, well, you don't really need to take this. I'd really like to sit
Right.
down and simplify this to the
Well, I'd
basic,
like to
like
know
we got.
what all these gauges are for, what we should be looking for. I mean, it doesn't do me any good to write down a temperature if it's wrong and not tell anybody or not.
If you don't really know what it should,
Right.
everything's.
Well, that's what I say. If we grab, we can get like a highlighter, and actually we get like maybe a marker that indelible that won't come off, and on the gauges
On the
we
gauges.
can number 1, 2, 3 or whatever.
Or we can even put them on, can we just
No.
write them on the pipe even?
Yeah, any place,
We'll just write.
right near them, yeah.
Right, just write them here, write them under here, just write them under each. Now, this was the one that it has to be at 70, it should be at 70,
So-
right?
Right. You're gonna see where it does dip
Dip
below.
below, yeah, Tom told me it was
Yeah, when
going
you
up
first
and
do your
down.
startup,
Right,
it's usually gonna be down maybe even to 65.
right.
But once the chiller's on and running for about 5 minutes, you're gonna see it creep up.
What are
It'll
the
go all
notes?
the way up to 90.
Should we
Not a problem.
keep an eye on these temperatures or write any of these things down?
I would, actually, you're gonna be able to get this temperature, over here, which is basically what we're looking for, is a
Right,
sump
okay.
water temperature.
Temperature, okay.
I don't need to know both these temperatures,
Right.
That would be more for, let's say we're doing preventive maintenance and that periodically we're coming in and we can take those temperatures while the machine's running and say, geez, we got a big spread, and our pressures aren't right, and maybe we're plugging up our tubes or
Is
something.
this something like, when we have our service contract with you guys, when you come in on a monthly basis, are you gonna
Right.
take these
Right.
readings?
That's when they should be looking at that stuff.
Okay,
That's
is that
part
something that
of-
you'll keep here so we can take a look at it too? I mean, I look at the preventive maintenance contract, and to be honest, you just don't know what it covers. I try to get Chris to sit down and say, look, when you come in and your guys come in, please write down the service work done, under service contract or something, so I know that, you know, before I used to change, he said you're supposed to, he takes care of the dehumidifier filters and blah, blah, blah. I mean, I used to do those on a regular basis, first of the month, and do all these things. But, you know, just so when he does the service work, or whoever does the service work comes in, and I can keep a folder on, I mean, it's just something that we have to justify, you know, is this service contract really worth having?
Right.
Or is it something that we should do? I mean,
See, a lot of that, I think different guys do their invoices, they don't know everything.
right,
One guy's, you know, it was broke, I fixed it, see you later.
Right.
And the next guy writes a book, so.
right.
But
So, I mean,
we
that's
can actually come up with a checklist of the things that we should be doing, and most of it,
That's what we need to do.
it's looking at things,
Right.
it's, you know, it's verifying our things where
So
they
that if
should
something
be.
goes wrong, and, you know, that person said, hey, I did this, and then the next person comes in, geez, obviously this wasn't changed. I mean, you know, because, like, you know, some service work and other things are just,
Well, you
kind
don't-
of, you know,
Yeah,
I'll
we
be
don't-
honest with you, are kind of, you know, crazy to have, and.
Sure, sure.
But,
Oh, no.
but with 2 rinks, you know, we really need to know what is going on,
Right.
and what you guys, and what really, you know, the whole thing entails. We don't know.
Right.
And try to pin Chris down to do that. So,
Sure.
well, we're supposed to
Well,
do this and do that. but
Each
we
guy
do it
should know
wrong.
where the last one left off.
Right,
too.
absolutely. That's because that's tough on you guys.
Right,
When
you don't inspect everything.
you're not here every single time.
Right.
You're all over the place. And
Right.
that's something, but we would like a checklist.
That'd be great.
Yeah. Oh, we can come up with something.
Something, well, at least,
Tell all the guys it's here, and then it'll be really, you know, you guys will have to remember if they happen to come up to get an invoice signed, and, you know, just say, oh, by the way, did you know, check off the things back there or
Right.
whatever? Just to help remind
Reminder,
you, because
sure.
you never know who you're gonna get.
right.
you know.
Oh, absolutely.
And if it's a guy that only comes here once every 6 months, you might not
Not remember.
Sure.
Right, oh, absolutely. Well, that makes it easier on everybody. And then, like I said, we can justify, you know, to the people, we have to
Yeah.
justify why we're spending this kind of money.
We used to have invoices that had all that right on them. And I could talk to Chris, maybe we could see if he could purchase just a small amount of those. That might be the way to go, you know.
Right.
But
I'd still
that-
like to have
that
a,
did-
yeah.
Right, but that did all your check water temperatures and
Right.
condensers and check the sump and, you know, pretty much covered everything. You buy them for a chiller application.
You know, I mean, some of the things you know, we're trying to read off the bill and try to see what it is, and I'm like, you know, and you know, you get some bills in here, and you get 4 or 5 or 6 bills in a month, and they're add up to be, you know, thousands of dollars. You're kind of, you know, wondering what actually went on, what happened.
Right. See, I've always been one, I try to write out more of what I did, because I always believed that the more the customer saw what I did, you know, and he could read it, he's like, well, yeah, okay, I'm not gonna argue with that bill, you know.
That's right.
Where, you know, the guy was here 6 hours and he put 2 sentences down, well, you know, geez, if you can't even, you know, write what he did down, what did he do for me, you know?
Well, that's something, if you can talk to Chris about that, and like I said, we can even, I've asked him before, you know, we can put something in place that, because, like I said, we've got to answer to certain people, and we got to understand why we're spending this kind of
They
money.
probably got generic forms from RSCS that cover this stuff, so we can put it on the computer and make a custom form up here, so.
That would be great. That would be great.
Actually, we use them for other places too, so.
That would be great.
But, you know, I like to see, you know, that, you know, like you say, with you guys also keeping track of things, it starts to narrow down the problems.
Right,
that you do
I
have.
mean, you can come in here and all of a sudden, you could be something simple, and you're looking around for hours trying to figure out what's going on. And again, like I said, it makes everybody's life a lot easier. Like I said, the more I can understand of what's going on with both these now, it just makes,
Is that the heat exchanger?
Yep, that's the underfloor heat exchanger. And you say, so what we're doing there is we're taking heat out of the sump
Right.
and passing it through the heat exchanger. our underfloor. Right. We've got a sensor up here for the underfloor temperature, and then eventually, like I say, we'll have our bypass valve here rigged up. I just got to put the operator on it, and that will do that function as far as the water warms up. While if it's cold, the water just comes around this way through the system, stays inside the building. And as the water gets warmer, then we start passing it outside and getting rid of the heat. So we want to keep the heat in for the chiller, and we want to keep it in for the underfloor heat. Anything we can grab that way it's gravy.
What is that thing that's on the?
This is the refrigerant leak detector for the vent lines. If for some reason one of the chiller circuits blew a high pressure relief due to lack of water in the condenser or whatever, and the safeties didn't pick it up, the pressure safety should shut your chiller down way before that. If for some reason it didn't though, you've got pressure reliefs on your vessels that will blow so nothing explodes or anything. It's really more for fire protection than anything. So if you did have a fire, the refrigerant will increase pressure with the temperature. So that'll blow off, and that sensor is going to pick up that 134A as your freon going through there, and that goes back to your Sherlock alarm panel. There's also another sensor on the back wall over here down low, and that senses the freon at the floor level, because freon is heavier than air. And so that's why we're, like say, be careful when you do walk into the room. Even if you don't have an alarm, don't always trust the alarm, you know. If you feel a little funny, you know, getting little spots in front of your eyes and that, get out.
There's no odor associated with it?
The only odor you're gonna get is maybe an oily smell. You may walk in, if it has just happened, there may be a cloud, a fog in the room. It's you know, it'll look like, you know, you're out over the ice with you know, the humidity is way too high. But there may be a slight oily smell, but like I say,
Nothing real distinctive as far as odor.
not with the freons.
Now, what was when we used to have to purge the system in Clinton? And boy, you get the off. You would get the smell where it was.
Is that ammonia?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, with ammonia, that, you know, that's totally different. Yeah, you have to, with that, there's times when you get air in the system, and you have to burp the air out. And yeah, ammonia is a much better, actually, energy efficient refrigerant and everything. Problem is that a lot of people are scared of it. I prefer it. When it leaks, you know it. If you open the door and you had a small ammonia leak in here, you know it, and you know how severe it is too. Because if you open the door, your eyes water, it's bad, you know.
We had a couple bad ones. You'd smell it right out on the ice, the back end of the ice or something. It's that bad.
Like I say, I kind of prefer it because you can narrow it down a lot quicker as to where it's coming from. But so like I say, you gotta, along with, you know, you got machines doing things for you, but you gotta let your body do the rest of it, you know. Yeah, if you feel weird for any reason, lightheaded or anything, get out of the room and make sure that it isn't something to do with the chiller, you know. If you're not not sure about it, call us up. We'll come down with a handheld leak detector or whatever. Actually, probably somebody at the college here has one.
They do.
They can zip over real quick for you. Because these sensors are only good for so long, and we'll have to go through the paperwork on that, and you should come up with a schedule as far as, let's say, every 2 years, regardless, replace the sensors. They have a lifetime on them. So there's little heater elements in them and that, and the heaters go, and they get contaminated. If you have a leak that's large enough, a vent line leak will carry oil with it, and once you've blown the sensors got that oil in it, you got to replace it. So
That's good.
all right.
I'll leave one of these books back here. I'll take the other two.
Yeah.
Put them in some safekeeping.
Are you gonna fire this up?
Yeah. I can do that.
I'd like to see that.
Okay, yeah. All right, let me put everything back to automatic, and then we'll start it up through our, I'll set the set point back. What I've done for the time being, we've got a drawing of this panel, and we can come up with a kind of a little drawing that shows suggested
Basically where the tape is where they should be, the
right.
point.
That's why I did that for right now, until everybody gets familiar with the panels.
Yep.
And I didn't want to,
Sure.
put hash marks all over everything, So that'll get us through for a little while, and then, like I say, we've got this all on CAD, so we can make up a little recommended setting list.
What's the significance of some lights being lit, some not?
Well, whether the things, if they're in automatic, well, number one, this one's going to stay off unless you have a failure. If, like say, if we deem the smart drive for some reason you feel isn't working, or that we have a problem actually with the pump, we'll shut number one pump right off here, and then we can turn number two to hand position, and then reset the controls on the chiller, and you're back to running. This switch basically is, if I'm in hand position, I can pick high or low.
Oh.
Normally it would have been the high position because you want it to chill. You could do it in the off season. Let's say if you're going to thaw the floor out, you could throw it to low, and it'll generate a little bit of heat into the brine and help you thaw out. You can do that, but so normally this will be automatic. This will actually light up when your ice temperature is satisfied, so you're cold enough. This pump will switch to low speed, so this will come on. This will be off. Right now we're calling for cooling, so this one's on. All right. Then there's like say, a little readback switch in here on the starter that's sending a signal over there. Right now it's telling the chiller to turn on, but I got to check to see if I still got temperature high enough here to keep it off. Condenser pump should always be in the automatic, and that's going to come on through your chiller. That's what's controlling that. This one is your backup pump, which I believe is hand position. I have to double check on that one. I think that's if this one for some reason were to fail, puts this one to hand position and let it run.
You couldn't leave that in auto and this would come on as a backup if the one went?
I don't know if it's wired into the auto position, that's all. I'll check on it. If it is, I'll let you know for sure. Like I say, I'll write up a little thing here that just actually describes each of the switches. Subsoil should basically always be left on. That pump's always going to be, by that running, it's always creating friction, and it's always putting a little heat back into the subsoil all by its little self.
Okay.
And then this other, the circ pump is the one that's actually I've called the underfloor heat pump.
Right.
And this is the one that takes it from the sump to the heat exchanger. This one should be an automatic. So, and, okay.
That goes to shop, too. They can't touch them on anything.
Yeah. Okay. So get everything back to here. Okay. Okay, let's see. Refrigerant leak normal. Now it was calling for the chiller now. Okay, it stopped here. So let's see. We went to this is my chiller set point. You should get a similar schedule on this thing once I get you rigged up. And there's two sets of set points. One of them will, as on this thing, be -40. It's doesn't concern us. It's basically the heating set point. All we want is the cooling, which is always the high.
Okay.
All right. So we don't have any unoccupied mode, but for clarity, what we do is for the occupied and unoccupied high set points, we put our same temperature in. So whatever you want for ice temperature in there. So you're going to be able to scroll down through, and then like say we were at 21 before, enter, enter, 21, enter. Now this one, I've got to send it over there, so I'm doing a little extra work. That one I don't think you're going to have to. Like I said, I'm not going to tell you for sure until I've done it. And I have to send it, so now I got to download it. There you go. And we go back to points, enter, enter, and then we can read it again. Okay. So now I got a high speed confirm. I set the height there. I'm telling it to go to high speed. This is the read back that it did do it. And then the chiller was started. And then if we turn the switch on to remote contact, then this thing will do its timeout function, cycle up, and then we'll be able to see the sump temperatures change, the tower bypass valve. Might as well. You see, right now we're still in that control for the underfloor heat. Once we come up, you'll see that disappear, and it'll, if it wants heat, it'll go for it. So everything here is kind of, some of the stuff has time delays on it, some doesn't. And that's probably the only thing I haven't really documented other than this display is what those times were, so that you guys should know that
Got an idea.
it's 1 minute or 5 minutes. There's really, the only thing that's, the largest time delay is on the condenser water pump, which is the 10-minute. And that's in that panel, there's a timer. That's what Carrier wants. I'd like to see it shorter than that, but at this point, it's been working. So I'm like, let's leave it. Like I say, get everything, all the bugs worked out, then if we want.
Tweak it if you want.
Right. Because by shortening that up, I can keep more heat in the sump in the off time. What's happening is, you've still got that water circulating, and it's basically cooling itself down. So like,
Shorten it up to keep it warmer as long as.
right.
This water is for condensation.
Yeah, that's because the chiller barrel underneath, there's moisture underneath the insulation in that. So because we've had it off, anything that had a little bit of frost on it, this was a big ball of ice before behind the sensor. Well, that's all melted.
And normally we won't see that much water on the floor.
No, this is.
But if there is a drip or two, water is not a concern.
Right. No, water we don't have a problem with unless it's all over. There you go.
The runtime should be close. A was at 1296 and B was at 198.
Okay. I'm not sure now. They have that the auto lead lag deal.
Right.
Now I don't know if it's actually set up for that. I don't. He did the startup. I got to find out.
Yeah, because like I said,
he did.
Because it doesn't make sense if one is at 45, one is at 55. Those numbers should have been closer, I would think.
Yeah.
The number of stars didn't correlate with the hours either.
No, starts were 324 to 2 something. They were close.
Right.
They
But
actually,
the hours,
they actually seem more than 45,
55 range.
The hours are totally off.
But actually, the 45-55 is not the percentage you're supposed to run. That's the output of them.
Right.
They should run about 50-50, correct?
Well, actually, as far as capacity, yeah, what you're gonna see on there when it says capacity, this'll go all the way up to, let's say, 50%, and then this one will come on.
Okay.
So it's kind of, they should have actually done it capacity circuit A, capacity circuit B, as far as I'm concerned. But that's the way they've always done it with
So if A never gets up to certain capacity, B would never turn on.
Right.
Maybe that's the thing.
Yeah, but,
Wear out A.
no, but isn't that programmed so occasionally
The
when
problem,
B don't have any hours on it?
That's what he said, it's supposed to do that.
right, the reason you got so many hours on there is because to this point, you have to make sure that it's done. You got a number, let's say A came on, and it's run. B came on only when you needed a little extra. B shut off, but A never did.
It kept running.
Now you're gonna
So
see,
number of starts could be close, but
Right.
actual running time or actual time is gonna be.
now that I'm controlling it, yeah, so now that the smart drive's shutting it off, you
You'll
should
see
see
them,
them.
but that's why the smart drive saves you money
See
and
how
has.
it's catching up.
Yeah, the smart drive will control.
Even though that's not really what he said. That's not the way I understood it. What it, the way he made it sound like is that the beauty of the system is
One would, yeah, that's what it kind of said. The beauty of the system was one would recognize the number of starts and running time and switch it over. Right. Kind of saying that.
Yeah. But when you look at it, the starts were close, and the hours would run way up.
That's what I'm saying. When we had the lead compressor one, and maybe that's why I asked him.
Right.
You know.
Yep. Like I say, if you don't shut it off, you can't switch the lead.
That's something